Women don't just hurt the men they love, they test them over and over again. And these tests aren't random, they're patterns, predictable behaviors that play out whenever emotions run deep. The paradox is brutal. The more she wants the relationship to work, the more likely she is to behave in ways that destroy it. Think about it. When a woman isn't invested, when the man is just nice company, nothing more. She's calm, easygoing, patient. His slow replies don't bother her. His choices don't matter much because her future doesn't hinge on them. She doesn't overanalyze because she doesn't care enough to. But once she's hooked, once she sees a man as high value, as someone she could actually build a life with, everything shifts. Now his response time becomes evidence. His decisions suddenly feel like threats to her imagined future. His attention transforms into oxygen, something she can't breathe without. That's when the testing begins. She questions his intentions. She pushes boundaries. She punishes small mistakes as if they're betrayals. Not because she doesn't want him, but because she wants him too much. Her emotions turn into pressure, and that pressure slowly suffocates the very connection she's trying to protect. And here's the irony. The man she values most ends up getting the worst treatment. He's the one facing constant suspicion, criticism, and demands, all while the man she barely cares about gets peace, patience, and grace. This is the investment paradox. The deeper her feelings, the more her insecurities rise. The more she wants to keep him, the more likely she is to drive him away. High-value men don't live under microscopes. They don't tolerate endless emotional turbulence. They walk. And when they do, women are left confused, wondering why the ones they loved the most were always the first to disappear. And here's the catch. These tests aren't fair measures of love, loyalty, or compatibility. They're emotional traps, set up not to reveal truth, but to guarantee failure. Born from anxiety and insecurity, not from genuine connection. It always starts small. She sends a message and counts the minutes before you reply. She suggests plans just to measure how eager you sound. She drops another man's name, waiting to see if jealousy sparks in your eyes. Each interaction becomes a trial, a search for hidden meaning. But from your perspective, every test feels like a punishment for the simple crime of attracting her in the first place. Think about it. When things were casual, it was light, fun, stress-free. No rules, no invisible scorecard. But the moment she invested emotionally, the game changed. New rules appeared, rules you never agreed to, rules designed so that no matter what you do, you fail. If she asks whether you find her friend attractive, the trap is set. Say yes, and you're unfaithful. Say no, and you're dishonest. Either way, you lose. This pattern reveals something deeper, a lack of trust in her own judgment. The tests aren't about you at all. They're about her insecurity, and high-value men see it instantly. They've played this game before, and they know how it ends. Not with deeper intimacy, but with withdrawal, with distance, with silence. Because the irony is brutal. The very behavior meant to secure a man's commitment is what drives him away. Each test proves not his loyalty, but her instability. Each conflict doesn't confirm his devotion. It confirms that peace with her will always be temporary. And then comes the volatility, the emotional roller coaster, the highs that feel intoxicating, the lows that feel catastrophic. To her, this storm feels like passion. To him, it feels like chaos, and chaos is never home for a man of value. Men who have real options won't stay in that chaos. High-value men always choose the path of peace over drama. No matter how strong the attraction, a woman who manufactures storms to feel desired ends up destroying the very desire she's trying to hold on to. Another way women punish the men they like is by chaining them to impossible standards. Not standards grounded in reality, but fantasies, perfect ideals born from movies, social media highlight reels, and romantic daydreams. The more invested she becomes, the more she imagines what a perfect version of him would look like. And then she begins resenting him for not living up to a man who doesn't even exist. This comparison trap is poison. She compares him to exes, selectively remembering their strengths while ignoring his. She compares the relationship to carefully curated couples online, forgetting that no one posts their fights or insecurities. Most damaging of all, she compares who he is today to who she thinks he could be tomorrow. She stops appreciating the man in front of her and starts managing him like a project. Every effort becomes not enough because in her mind, he should already be better. From his perspective, this is suffocating. He feels judged by invisible rules he never agreed to. He feels punished for failing expectations he doesn't even understand. No matter how hard he tries, he's always coming up short. And when a man realizes that nothing he does will ever earn peace, he stops trying altogether. Some men shut down emotionally. Others walk away entirely. Because no man of value wants to audition for love. No man wants a relationship to feel like a performance review. Gratitude is replaced by entitlement, appreciation by evaluation. And slowly, he learns that her affection is not love. It's conditional approval, granted only when he performs to her script. And that's where the most destructive pattern begins. Intermittent reinforcement. The roller coaster of unpredictable rewards and punishments that turn love into addiction and intimacy into control. Intermittent reinforcement doesn't just control his behavior, it rewires his identity. It teaches him that your happiness matters more than his authenticity. He learns that love is conditional on compliance, not rooted in genuine connection. Over time, this psychological trap transforms him. He starts walking on eggshells, carefully predicting and preventing your negative reactions. He begins cutting off parts of his personality that once defined him. The confident, independent man who first attracted you slowly disappears, replaced by an anxious approval seeker who lives for your validation. But here's the irony. The man who needed no approval was magnetic. The man who begs for it is not. You've trained him out of the very qualities that made you want him in the first place. And while he may comply, resentment builds underneath. He resents the invisible rules. He resents the version of himself he's becoming just to keep the peace. And eventually, that resentment detonates, either in passive aggression that poisons the relationship, or in a sharp awakening where he regains his confidence and decides he's done with someone who shrinks him instead of supporting him. One of the most destructive expressions of this cycle is the double standard. Women often apply different rules to the same behavior, depending on how much they care about the man. If a casual fling texts other women, it barely registers. But if the man you truly want receives the same texts, it suddenly feels like betrayal. The behavior is identical, but your emotional investment transforms it into something unacceptable. This inconsistency teaches him that fairness doesn't exist in your relationship, that the rules change with your moods. It reveals insecurity disguised as control. And men of value see it for what it is. A relationship where loyalty is punished, where attraction is diminished, and where love feels more like a contract than a choice. When you create drama to generate intensity, you believe you're deepening connection, but all you're really proving is that peace and happiness aren't possible with you. When you hold him to impossible standards, you imagine you're inspiring him to grow. But what you're really showing is that nothing he does will ever be enough. This entire cycle of security sabotage comes from a misunderstanding about what actually creates lasting attraction in men. You think pressure secures commitment. You think tests prove love. You think consequences enforce respect. But men don't bond through punishment. They bond through appreciation. They don't commit through fear. They commit through freedom. They don't grow through criticism. They grow through inspiration. The harder you push, the weaker the connection becomes. And from his perspective, here's what your increased investment actually signals. First, he recognizes that the more you care, the less freedom he has. The easy, relaxed woman who once enhanced his life has now become a gatekeeper of rules, reactions, and punishments. Second, he realizes that your love is conditional. The acceptance he once enjoyed has turned into constant evaluation, where every gesture is graded against invisible standards. Love feels less like a gift and more like a test he can never quite pass. Third, he sees that your emotional state has become his responsibility. Your happiness rises and falls depending on his compliance, making him less a partner and more a caretaker of your moods. Fourth, he begins to feel the relationship tipping into a one-sided exchange. His needs, preferences, and boundaries no longer carry equal weight. They're dismissed as selfish whenever they conflict with yours. Love, to him, now feels like sacrifice without recognition, effort without reciprocity. Fifth, remember that attraction is built through positive emotions, not negative ones. The goal is to make him feel good about himself and the relationship, not to make him anxious about losing you or failing to meet your standards. Attraction doesn't survive under these conditions. The man who was once drawn to your energy now dreads your expectations. The relationship that once felt like a privilege now feels like a burden. And the future he once looked forward to now feels like a sentence. Finally, he begins to compare. He remembers other relationships where his value was met with gratitude, not punishment. Times when his effort was appreciated, not scrutinized. That contrast makes the truth clear. Being with you now feels less like love and more like debt. From here, only two paths remain. Either he accepts this dynamic, slowly losing respect for himself and attraction to you, or he regains his confidence and looks for someone who adds to his life instead of complicating it. This destructive pattern isn't random, nor is it a conscious choice. It's rooted in millions of years of biological programming. In ancient environments, a woman's survival often depended on securing the commitment of a high-status male. That pressure hardwired psychological behaviors, testing, punishing, and demanding more as ways to secure resources and loyalty. Back then, those strategies meant survival. Today, in modern dating markets where men have endless options, those same instincts often push men away. Understanding this biology explains why breaking the pattern feels so difficult. You're not just fighting habits, you're fighting evolution itself. But knowing this also brings hope. Once you see these reactions as unconscious programming rather than deliberate choices, you gain the power to override them with awareness and intention. The shift begins with practical changes. Test your consistency. Would you react the same way if someone less important did what he just did? Separate your feelings from your standards. Intensity doesn't make your boundaries more valid. Maintain your own sources of happiness so he's not burdened with carrying all of it. Replace criticism with gratitude, demands with requests, punishment with communication. And above all, remember that attraction is built through positive emotions, not fear, pressure, or guilt. In the end, you face a choice. You can cling to control, punishing men for being valuable, or you can build security through appreciation and support. Men with options will always choose the woman who makes their life lighter, not heavier. Which kind of woman you become determines not just the future of your relationships, but the quality of love you allow yourself to receive.